And I'll let everybody in.
So I just recording it. I said, got it, right? Got it.
Yeah.
All right.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. As always, I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes to connect your audio and your cameras, and we'll get started. Good morning. I see a couple people joining us. Richard, good morning. Good morning, everybody. As always, these sessions are always a little bit better if we have your microphones on, if we have your cameras on for any questions, and make sure you use the chat feature for any questions. We'll get to them at the bottom of this training. So today's training, creating your own inventory in a tight market. I have the pleasure of having a special guest today here. Joining us, Guillermo Teran, a top producer, top listing agent, 2020, 2021. I believe other years prior to that has been a wild ride, and a team leader here in Avantiway. For obvious reasons, most of you guys already know me. The team leader, I'm the branch leader here in Weston. I'm also the managing director at Avantiway. But today's not about me. Today's all about Guillermo. We wanted to really reach out to Guillermo to see how he's been able to handle current market situations, the current industry, the seller's market, limited inventory, and a lot of the crazy movement that we've seen over the past couple years now. And we have a couple questions for him, but I did want to pass the mic over to Guillermo. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome. I know that your time is very valuable, Guillermo, and I know that there's many things to do. And today is all about you letting us know what tricks you have under your sleeve, what you do in current market circumstances, and what we can learn from all your achievements.
Well, first, let me welcome everybody, and it's a pleasure to sit here in front of you guys to actually. Guys get to pick my brain, and I have to share some of my stories of what I've been doing. I think I'm kind of a very basic guy. I just do the 1, 2, 3s, and I keep it simple. And that over time with consistency, it seems to, be the right formula for me. So I will be going over some stuff things that you probably heard before, probably nothing new. Maybe a little tweak that you have from the, you kind of personalize your own personal touch that you give to stuff, right? And so I'm happy to here to sit with you guys. I'm also very, very happy to, I'm more of a listing agent, and I guess we'll go over some numbers so you guys will see the production that I have. But I, from the beginning, became more of a listing agent, and that's what I'm here, right? So I can share that part of the listing. But I also would encourage you guys I think real estate has two parts of it. One side is the listing part of it, and I think the listing actually breaks into two. One part is getting a listing, and another part of it is servicing the listing. So the listing part, I think, has two components that are very, very important. And then you also have buyer agents, and I could really tell you that a buyer agent, we end up doing both, working with buyers and listings, but the talent and the skill sets for listing agents are a little bit more different than a buyer agent, right? And I've noticed that. So I by nature, I'm a salesperson. I like selling. I've been around sales the whole time. Even my other businesses that I had, before walking into real estate, I've always been around, sales. So I find that the listing part of it gives you an opportunity to show off, not to show off, to demonstrate those skills, to bring the skill set of the sales perspective into the real estate world.
Guillermo, I did want to mention to everybody, one of the key things that you mentioned as a starting point. One of my favorite things about you and the way that you carry your business is the 1, 2, 3 mentality. You keep it simple. You don't, in your process, in your strategy, we tend as realtors, for most of us, to overcomplicate processes, to look at market statistics, to look at least for me, I'm a very analytical guy, and I drive myself with data points, as most of you guys know. But you go back to the basics. You say urgency, motivation factors, what I can do for you, and what choices you have in the current market. We sat down yesterday for a couple hours, and picking your brain on my end, it was a cool factor to see this point of view as to this is who I am, this is how I can carry business, and this is what I can do for you. This is where you stand, and this is the plan of action. So I think what you say is completely real. It's not just about being on the listing side, and it's not just about being on the buyer's end. It's about really servicing that listing and servicing that buyer in a way that you can really create your and adapt to current market circumstances by creating your inventory, your own business, and really keeping it simple. And that's one of the things that we spoke about yesterday. Most of your strategies, most of your business, and most of how you carry yourself is with mentality as to service-oriented business. So that being said, one of the main things that I wanted to share with everybody is how you started your geofarming. I think that was a really great point that we touched based on yesterday. The mentality behind where you got started and how you started growing your business to the point that we're having this discussion today for everybody to learn from you. So that being the question, how did you get started? What area that you choose, and how?
All right, well, the first I started about 7 years ago, geofarming. Okay, so I originally started working real estate here in Miami, and I'm Nicaraguan, so I moved back to Nicaragua in 1993, and I came back 7 years ago, right? 7 years ago, re-injected myself into the real estate world, and so I started with my neighborhood. Like I tell most people, start with your neighborhood, start where you live. I mean, that is the most common sense for you to start, the easiest way to start. I looked at different areas, but the reality is, and I also started geofarming. I remember teaming up with other people and trying different sectors. But your natural place to start will be your neighborhood. Like right now, I'm geofarming my neighborhood, and actually picked up another neighborhood that I'm working on. Right, you'll see some stats, but I mean, my neighborhoods, it's a gated community, it's 100 houses, and to this day, in the last 7 years, I've done, I think, 27 transactions out of that neighborhood. So that little 100 houses has really, it's where I go back to, as I've been working and they always come through for me. Like, even the good and bad times, I know I could go back there and I could find a listing there that's something that's come out. So it always comes out there, right? But I do remember at the beginning, trying to geofarm my first partner that I had or worked in a team. I remember that we looked at the numbers and we kind of wanted to do Pinecrest. Here we looked at the numbers and we see the numbers and we actually started doing Pinecrest. And it was a horrible experience. I mean, we were knocking on doors and people will talk to us and they will actually call a realtor. They have another realtor in my front, and those areas were really, really, dominated by other people. So sometimes we look at the numbers and we start seeing different numbers, right? And things that look very attractive also is going to attract a lot of competition. So, I mean, what makes sense to me at my point was, and I remember my brother Enrique telling me, listen, don't do your neighborhood. I mean, you only have 100 houses. And if I look back at the history of 100 houses, they've really produced enough for me to keep it going. And it was a place that you would look at it and say, maybe it was not attractive. So I think that, look, your nature is this, is that's where you live, that's your neighborhood, you should dominate your neighborhood. And that's just common sense. And that's what I would advise people to try to dominate that,
And that's a really cool way. And like I said before, going back to the basics, you keep it very on the ground. You don't tend to fly away as to the dreaming mentality of and you learn from different mistakes. For example, one might say, Pinecrest, I see the volume, the inventory, very attractive. Let me go do that. But again, you went back to the basics. What do I know? Where can I farm? And 27% market share in a neighborhood is completely impressive, and it's doable. We will touch base back on the door knocking. That's going to be a very interesting point that we will take a look at further. But I want to share with everybody a couple stats to show you a couple factors on Guillermo's production. I was very impressed with what we found. Everybody can see my screen, correct? Perfect. So moving forward, the first stat that we found, we did two analyses, one for 5-year production and the other one for the last 12 months. We're going to get started with the 5-year analysis. This is your basic rental versus sales split for the graph that we're going to see today. For the overall 5 years that you've been, the last 5 years that you've been a realtor, we have a 50% sales transaction, 49% rental transactions, which is pretty much a 50-50 split. Moving forward, from your rental transactions, who did you represent? You represented the landlord. 95.6% of all your rental transactions has been on the listing side. The second one, on your sales transaction, 95% you were representing the seller. So both on your overall split of 50-50 sales, 50% rentals, 95% and 96% were both listings. So that's the first thing that called my attention when I was pretty much analyzing your numbers before we did this interview. We sat down yesterday, and my question was, just plain looking at numbers, this is a guy that is very much geofarming. And if he's not geofarming in one area in particular, I want to find out what he's doing. And I will show everybody your heat map, which is what really made me say, I really want to speak with this guy. Because looking at your production, looking at your heat map, you do have a couple areas that are, we would say, is your main geofarming, meaning your neighborhood that we just spoke about, and a couple areas next to it. But then we started seeing heat maps that were elsewhere, and that's going to be a follow-up question that I'm going to have for you as soon as we finish up this part. Last 5 years, transaction representation total. So out of the past 5 years volume that you've had, 95.6% has been for listings, again, representing either the seller or the landlord. Last one, and this is going to be my main question pertaining to production, for all your listings, which for sellers, for landlords, for tenants, and for buyers, 96% has been on the listing side. The huge factor that caught my attention was almost 40%, 39.1%, you closed both sides, meaning you had the seller and the buyer, or landlord and the tenant. Okay, that's really what I want to touch base with you. If most of your production is listings, how are you closing both sides on almost 40%? That is very impressive.
Well, look, we started to see the trend after, I guess, the pandemic, and basically it's a seller's market. So whatever listing you're going to get, and I have my own. Okay, let's go back to a little bit of before you get into listing. First of all, okay, in the little on my geographic area that I have a waiting list of people that actually want to move into the neighborhood. So most likely when I get a listing, I will already have a buyer already lined up. I have a list of buyers too, also of buyers that want to move in different neighborhoods. So I kind of have that set up in a way to basically to do that. And also in today's market, I mean, if you're going to list a property, if you get a listing, you are probably going to get a multiple offer scenario. And some of them are going to come without a realtor. And for example, one of my strategies this is the way I do my listings, and everybody has a different way. But when I list a property, I wait 10 days. For some reason, it's worked out for me. I put up the listings on the MLS on a Tuesday. I wait to not the next Saturday, the other Saturday, I wait about 10 days, and I will not show the property to anybody. I mean, I'm going to get calls. People tell me I have a buyer ready to go. Now, having said that, every listing of mine has professional pictures, and I do 2 videos. I do a short video, so I could use it much in the social, the short video under 30 seconds. So it could be Instagram, it could use, and then I have the long video. I've also noticed with the videos have changed. I've started to introduce myself in the video. People recognize you when they see you in the video, and for some reason that gives it a more personal touch. So what I do is I do start sending out the video. Which is kind of the long video will be like a tour video of the place. So people start getting an idea. And then I'll do an open house. Remember back in COVID, we were doing the open houses, but they were kind of open houses with appointments. What you want to get is that you have 10 people outside your door and you got people coming in, you got somebody coming in, you got coming out, and you create that urgency, and that's going to generate at least 3 or 4 offers. So I will do that on a Saturday. By Monday or Tuesday, I will be having 3 or 4 offers. And I would definitely sit down try to make up my mind, see what kind of offers. Having said that, I'm very also, as a listing agent, I look at offers, and we could talk about that maybe later on, how listing agents are looking at offers, because the offer is not the highest offer that wins, but I would create that multiple scenario offers. Obviously, if there's one that's coming on that is coming by themselves, obviously I would work with those people. I also team up when I do open houses. I team up with a mortgage broker or somebody. Number one, they help you with the cost of the open house, but somebody walks in there that is just a walking person, and you have other numbers, haven't talked to the mortgage broker right there, getting pre-qualified and try to get that offer. Because as a realtor, if you want to double end it, there is definitely more commission for your part of it. So you want to be set up. If somebody walks in at the door that just started looking, that does not have, and they like the property, obviously I'm going to try to work that guy up, because that becomes my client. And so that's worked out for me, having that process, not showing it, having it at the open house, and having a lender at the open house. That's a formula that's been working good for me.
Correct. And this is something that I wanted to share with everybody, not just to remind you, but for those of you that just joined us. The graphs that we're seeing today, we're analyzing the past 5-year production for Guillermo, out of which the first couple of slides we showed that through his production on the past 5 years, 95 to 96% of his productions have been listings. Now, the interesting factor that we're touching base on now is that almost 40% of his listings, he's represented both the buyer and the seller and the buyer. Now, the interesting point that you mentioned, Guillermo, not just the pandemic production, the steps to follow open house, how you got to this number. I think we can summarize on that factor is going back to our conversation yesterday. We started looking at your production. I asked you a couple of questions, meaning if 96% of your production is listing, where are your buyers going? Because I'm seeing only a 4%, 5%. And then I thought to myself, this guy's closing 40% both sides, meaning you're allocating, and this is a very interesting thing, you're allocating the list of buyers that you have to your own listings. And that is something that through the pandemic, we can only describe as you're creating your own supply and demand, which is in many cases very, very hard to do. But I believe that the pandemic not just created a massive opportunity for this, but really allowed you to dominate this process, meaning we're looking at not just pandemic years, we're looking at the past 5 years. So I think you've been undergoing this sequence for quite a while. So at that rate, and I wanted to make it clear for everybody, not just Guillermo's production is not just 95% listings, but 40% he's represented both sides. So this is why I included this arrow here, meaning you can argue that this 39%, if he closed both sides, we can duplicate that into within his production, right? Because he represented both sides. Now, an interesting thing that we were discussing also, Guillermo, in your listings, when you take a listing, and the interesting factor to me is you do not give a discount.
Yep.
You have not lowered your commission in listings. Your discount rate is also close to 0%, and I do not see one discount in the past couple of years. So talk to us a little bit about that. How are you promoting your added value? How are you managing these buyers that you're keeping as a list for when you have a listing? And basically, how does your demeanor or conversation go with a seller when getting to that listing presentation?
All right. So let's go back to a little bit of like geofarming, and then we're going to go back to, because I do take listings all over. I mean, I take listings. I focus on my area.
I'm glad you reminded me, because before we get to that, I want to show people your heat map that we were discussing before, as we're getting to that point. This is Guillermo's heat map for both listings and buyers. I feel confident enough to put both, because most of your production, 96% of your production has been listings. This is a heat map that I was referring to before. We see your geofarming here, and we see a couple other points. So that's what we wanted to touch base. I'll give you back the mic.
All right, so geofarming, my main part, right, will be definitely this part right here. That's my neighborhood. I started geofarming this area after the pandemic, which I'll give you a story. I'm on my 5th house over here, right? I'm on my 5th property here, and I double-ended, I think, 3 of those. This was back at the beginning that I did some transactions on the beach. Kind of was trying to do something on the beach. That kind of didn't work out for me that well, right? So I've been going back, but this is the area that I kind of focus on. But like I said, I'll take a listing. I mean, I've taken listings for loads. I'll take a listing anywhere. But I also team up with people. I do a lot of teaming up with people. If you look back on my history, you're going to see that I've worked with so many realtors in this whole in the transactions, right? I try to. There was back before the pandemic, I was getting up to like I would go have 14 listings. I would be stressed out if I would have less than 5 listings. That allowed me to team up, because look, one thing is to become a machine of getting listings, but then servicing the listing, it's a big part. And sometimes when you double-end it, and I double-ended the listing, and then you have a buyer that wants to move to another property, then I will also work with another buyer agent that will help me with the buying part of it, so keep doing it. Look, my last 3 transactions have been very, very interesting, because they've been very challenging. People, people that have been selling their listings and they're moving to somewhere close. So I had to pretty much sell a property and get these people into another property. Obviously, I did look for help with other realtors that helped me on the buying part of it, but it's also a team concept, right? If I give you some of the insights, how do the listings look? I do a lot when you're going to do your farming area. I do a lot of personal walking. I don't like to do the mail outs. I like to actually, I do a lot of printing of just listed, and also I text people, I WhatsApp people the image that just listed. The reality is this, that you're not going to get a listing off the bat. I mean, when you do the area, everything is going to indicate that you need at least 6 touches, 6 points of contact with that person before you start generating any traction. Or maybe after the 3rd touch, you will generate some kind of traction, right? So I developed, and that could be a conversation for another time, which I developed this whole method of door knocking. I really believe in door knocking being the cheapest, the strongest, and the healthier way of actually getting a listing. Because I mean, this is a roadmap that I made, right? And that I made back, made this about 5, 7, 6 years ago. And I still use it to this day, right? So you're gonna see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different touches. I have different market pieces that I could share with you guys in the presentation. That's who I am, the beginning, introducing myself. Look, very, very powerful I'm a neighbor. I mean, I live in the neighborhood, and I'm a neighbor in the neighborhood. Why is being a neighbor or you living in the neighborhood very, very important? Because when you give your listing presentation, you are going to throw in that you have an invested interest in that listing for getting the highest price. Because if that listing goes up, my property goes up too. Correct. So when you're a neighbor, now you're there is a reason why I'm invested in this listing to be sold at the highest price possible, right? So that becomes
let me make a comment right there, so we can be all clear in this process. For the geofarming process that we've been taking a look at in Guillermo's heat map, the main thing that we notice is that within his production for both sides, or just taking a look at the listing side, Guillermo himself has different heat maps, and I'll show you guys very quickly before we get into this. We can see different heat maps that have a lot of movement going on within his transactions. What we are discussing now is the basis as to why that looks like that and what his process is. Two interesting things that we spoke about yesterday, main thing being, Guillermo does have a couple main geofarming areas that he farms, and he farms on a constant basis. The coolest thing that you told me when we sat down yesterday, Guillermo, is once you have a listing, because you will take a listing if it's outside of your geo farm, that's without a question. The interesting factor is once you obtain a listing elsewhere, you farm that area, and you may not devote the same effort that you do within your geo farm for obvious reasons. We can't be everywhere. But it was very cool to me that you take this listing area and you farm it for quite a while. So by farming, and I'll get to that, and I'm going to ask you a question regarding that. By farming that area, that's why we see different spots of the map with different production, and that pretty much made sense to me. Then that's why we see you dispersed with listings and not buyers. Typically, the map that we see on your production with that amount of movement is when you look at buyers, but you have it with listings. So that was my main question. Guillermo, why does the map look like that? Your answer was, if I have a listing elsewhere, I'll farm that area for the opportunities that we see.
Yeah, every listing that I get, look, guys, first of all, when you get a listing and you, let's say, walk the area, door knock the area. Look, I ride motorcycles, so this is going to be like, you could go on a car from point A to point B. And you go on a bike from point A to point B, what you see is completely different. So when you get up and you start walking in that neighborhood and actually door knocking, it just listed, I'll do a flyer, just listed, and I'll just, knock around and look, I just listed your neighbor's property. Because first of all, before the pandemic, before this exchange, most of the sales will come within the neighborhood. Somebody in that neighborhood knows somebody that wants to move in, or they have a family member that wanted to move in. And you'd be surprised, people don't talk to each other even in the neighborhoods, right? So I will definitely walk around and you will see things that the eye will catch. You will see houses, being well maintained. You will see a property that is not being well maintained. And so you start kind of your own, seeing what's going on, and you see if it's a house that's, maybe coming into this distress, right? Maybe coming into the stress, because of the way the property is running down. I'm going to give you an example. This is a true story. So this is right before the pandemic starts to hit, and it's already hitting. I get a call. I had sold the pre-construction property for $460. This guy he definitely lost his job. He was in a position and he was getting moved to Lake Worth. Where do you find any job? So we sat down and he had interviewed with Cole Banker, Keller Williams, guys. And I remember preparing myself, walking the neighborhood, seeing what was going on, noticing the lack of inventory. And I remember that I sat down with him and I told him his house. And I said, listen, write on a piece of paper what you think your house is worth, and I'll tell you what I think. And he put 715. I put 700,000. So right off the bat, right, I guess the previous listing, you have to dominate your listing presentation. But one of the things that people were not seeing, they were not looking ahead. I mean, most of those people were doing, if you just run the listing presentation, and it's just going to give you stats, right? It's going to give you stats, and people were just running off the stats. I was not only showing stats, I was also showing where the market was going to go, right? Because that past the pandemic, we did spend like 2 months without no movement, right? So there was like a little pause, and I projected that pause. And I remember I did the whole, I did the pictures, the video, the whole, and I did the open house after 10 days, and I had like 15 people show up, and I had on my hands by Monday, I had 4 offers, and they were all without a realtor. Wow. So here I am accepting an offer, and I have 3 more offers on my hands, right? And the beauty of this neighborhood is there's 78 houses in the neighborhood, and they all look the same. They're big houses. They're 2,700 square feet homes, right? 5-bedroom houses, but they all look the same. It's the same cookie cutter, the same house, So here I am, and I remember when I walked the neighborhood, I had seen one of the front doors, they were the kind of glass was kind of broken. Actually, there was a brick stuck to it. It was one of these, I guess, impact windows. So the brick didn't kind of break the window, but it got stuck to it, right? And I remember calling my attention. I asked what happened there. And what happened was the wife or the girlfriend, and they don't know they were married, got into a fight, and she had walked out of the property. And so what I saw as an opportunity, and I went back and I said, you know what, I have 7 offers. And I remember going back and knocking on the guy's door and said, listen, would you like to sell your house? And he's like, I'm not really selling. And I go, what about if I get you $700,000 for your house? Will you sell your house? And the guy's like, oh, you're just a typical realtor. You're full of lies, etc. And I had my my listing agreement on me. And I said, listen, I have a listing agreement. I remember scratching it for 6 months. I put this to 24 hours. Give me 24-hour listing agreement. And if I don't bring you a buyer within 24 hours, it's over. Right. And the guy agreed to it. Obviously, I already had the offer. Within 3 or 4 hours, I'm knocking the front door with the buyer. Right. And that scenario. So I started knocking doors, looking for the other one. And then I found a second property that was the owner wanted to sell. He had a tenant in there. We had an issue taking the tenant out. So that was a longer closing. So that's how I got those out of those 4 offers that came in. Actually, I was able to land 3 of them. And those were double-ended deals, like you said, right?
And that's one of the things that impresses me about not just your production, but the way that you carry your business is just going back to the basics, like not being overcomplicated. You saw the opportunity, the urgency. You said, I have 4 other buyers, no realtor. Why not?
So like I said, let's go back to the beginning. It has to do a lot with your personality, right? So you need to define your personality. If you're a buyer, if you're more of an analytic guy, if you like working with buyers, I mean, that's fine. But don't look what you're strong as that. I like to talk. I like to communicate with people. The reason I like to the door knocking is because when you talk to people face to face, you see the expressions, you could read movement, and people talk a lot, right? And once they see you working out there, and especially when you have it just sold, right? Look, it's also very, very important that I see very realtors don't do this a lot. Leverage yourself when you get it just sold. When you sell a listing, don't just put it on Facebook, just sold. Print out the flyers and go door knocking and just say, listen, you knock on the door, listen, I just sold the property over there, right? And so and so. That becomes key. You're leveraging yourself from that listing. That will generate other listings. If put yourself in a situation, if you're thinking of selling your house, wouldn't it make sense to give that listing to the realtor who just sold the house in your neighborhood and at the highest price?
And that's one thing, Guillermo, I do want to mention. You're completely right on that. In the past 5 years, the question in our research that they've asked any sellers that sold their house within that year for the research, the main answer was, why did you pick your agent? The response was local market knowledge. That was the main thing. So that goes directly to the point that you mentioned. Why would I sell my house with anybody else other than the guy that I know, that knows my neighborhood, that has had movement in my neighborhood, and that has spoken to me about his particular business? With that being said, the main question here that I think everybody is thinking is door knocking. What is, going back to the strategy, what made you think of door knocking? And I do want to mention something that we spoke about yesterday. The door knocking concept is a no-brainer. You've been through several trainings. You've been through several different programs, and I think that our mentality is aligned on this one. You can go through different marketing strategies, different outlets, different software, different anything that you can do in marketing, but guaranteed every single class that you go to will finish up with, this works. However, it does not work as good as door knocking. So I think it's a no-brainer that complete mentality is working.
Somebody asked me to go over the map. I mean, we could do
Yes.
put the map on. Look, I've done for door knocking. I have created different pieces that I could share with you guys, that I share with other people, right? But basically, how I start my door knocking, right, is I created a piece. I have different sizes. Look, I went through the hangers. I don't like hangers. I created a piece that the size and the kind of paper that I like, but it's basically the first one that if you do the first one, it's basically a door knock, and it's basically a piece of paper that says who I am and what could I do for you in the back. The front is who I am, and in the back is who I am. And the first part is basically you kind of want to knock on somebody's door and you want to say, listen, I'm a neighbor in the neighborhood. I work real estate. I just want to, to let you know that I exist. 2-3 seconds, keep it short. That would be the first one. Sometimes people say, listen, I want to know what my house was worth, and then that will generate a CMA, right? My second knock, I will do a neighborhood profile update, now with neighbor information. I will get some stats of the neighborhood and put them in, on my flyer, and then take that flyer and just take it around and give people some statistics. Now, this time, the second time they're seeing you around, so when you do the door knocking, don't expect everybody that's going to open the doors for you right away. It doesn't even work that way. So sometimes they open up the door a little bit that you can slide it through. Sometimes you will not have a communication and you leave it in the door. But you eventually these people will be getting in touch with you, right? So you want to walk your dog, you want to be walking around and say hi to people. The other thing that's very, very important. Look, man, sounds ridiculous. Back to basic. If you're a realtor, you have to have your business card with you 100% all the time. You got to be giving out those business cards like it's just whoever you meet, whatever gardener, etc. It's just you want to give that out. It's just basic one-on-one tactics, So you want to let to know people are realtor. By this point that you're talking to people, you might get it just listed. You might get a listing, right? So if you go down. If you go down over here, you go down CMA, listed, put you up here, just listed. Once you get it just listed, you'll door knock and knock around and wait for I just listed the property and do that door knocking. Wait a week, right before you do your open house. And then you will do your open house, right? And then you will do your just sold. Look, this is the most powerful one to knock on. And once you knock somebody's door, listen, I just sold. I remember I would tell people sometimes I would use this line, listen, your property is worth more today than yesterday. They go, why? Because I just sold this property, right? So now you have this new comp. I remember I used to use that line a lot when people would be knocking on the door and be, listen, I just want to let you know your house is worth more money today than yesterday. And then we go like, why is that? And then it's kind of funny I noticed when you door knock a just sold flyer, people tend to open up. They want to show you the house. Hey, but come in, let me show you my house. This was it better looking than mine? Look what I did to it. People tend to open up. Now, by this time, they've seen you out on the street. They've seen you door knocking. They've seen you out 3 or 4 or 5 times. So there's a level of trust, right? That's already been. So they start to see, and they're, I might be thinking of selling within a year. Now, I write all those things down. Look, I'm working a listing right now. The latest listing that I have, that listing has been in the works for like a year. I knocked that door about a year ago. The guy was just buying a pre-construction. He's about to get his house in May. We just put the house on the market about 20 days ago. So some of these listings start popping up. Like, for example, right at this moment, because the way listings are moving fast, I'm having my inventories right now. I have 2 right now, and I just one. I think just have one listing that I'm working on right now. The other one just wanted to contract. But I could tell you that my pipeline, I already have 6 listings that I know are going to be coming to market.
Wow.
Right. So those are already, I've been talking to them already, getting information. So they're like, the way I would look at it, I've been fishing. They're on the hook. I just haven't reeled them in yet.
And I think it's worth mentioning to everybody looking at this roadmap, all of these touch points that we're taking a look at here, they're all door knocking. Okay, so we have no mail outs. This is all has to do with a door knocking strategy. One thing that I do want to note is that the timing and the content for each one of these is pretty genius because once you get to the just sold, as you were mentioning, not only have they seen you a couple times already, but the mentality behind I just sold this listing, the emotional response from those owners of that other property is going to be, oh, so and so used to live there. How much did it close to? Oh, they moved, but you've already created that rapport. So I agree with you 100%. Your
Look, guys,
probability of getting invited in is way
one of the
higher.
things that's also tips that I could give you. Number one, you use the word neighbor. I work with neighbor. The other thing is this: know your listing presentation. And I'm going to give you one trick that I've learned that I heard this from Tom Ferry a long time ago. So when you look at the comps, go into the MLS or the tax and see who bought the property. So when you say, when you're in the listing presentation, first of all, I really encourage you to dominate the listing presentation, practice it, simulate with somebody else. You're going to be cutting, the reality is this: it's very, very few times that you get to that a client will let you go through the whole listing presentation. So you always got to be reacting because they want, oh, I don't know about this. But when it comes to the comps, and you say that house was sold to Mr. Fernandez, it was sold, and we sold that house to Mr. Fernandez 2 months ago for $460. When I use the word we, I'm not lying. It's not doesn't mean it's me, it's we, realtors, etc. And when you put people's names to the comps, automatically that seller thinks that you sold it, right? So the level, dive into the comps. I mean, don't just say, well, this house sold for this. When you say this house just sold for this, it was a little bit nicer inside. Mr. Fernandez had it, maybe decoration a little bit, and you know that because of the pictures. So when you do use that little trick, you're creating a level of intimacy with that seller. Wow, this guy really knows his market, knowing so and so, right? So that's become very, very helpful. The other thing is when I door knock, I'll share with you guys, there's an app called HomeSnap, right? If you use that app, you'll notice that app has a little camera on the top. You touch that camera and you take a picture of the house, automatically it gives you all information about the house. When it was sold, how much I bought it for. So sometimes, before you knock that house or something, I'll just take a picture and have some information. I mean, I sometimes, you start to remember the person who lives there, and I'll give you I'll give you at least a personal title, right? So either Mr. Fernandez or Mr. Gonzalez or Mr. Smith, So those are kind of tricks that I've learned, because look, being a listing agent and getting listings has a lot to do with your attitude. If you portray yourself as, I could do this, I'm the one that's going to be able to do this for you, I'm going to go the extra step. I say, look, one of my punchlines is, listen, I'm the guy who's going to sell. I mean, I'm going to do whatever it takes to sell this property. And when they see you door knocking, look, I door knock, I do the mail outs, I do this. Look, it's not very common to see people door knocking.
Correct.
That's just the reality. I mean, it's not very common to see somebody, out in the middle, 11 o'clock or whatever, door knocking and talking to people. So when they see that kind of level of effort, right? That's how you get the listings. They see the effort. You do a good listing presentation. You talk about the comps. You put names to those comps. That gives you a different level. And also your attitude and the energy that you bring to the presentation. That, listen, I'm the guy who's gonna sell this for you. I'm willing to go the extra mile and go a little bit. I'm gonna go the extra mile.
Another key item that we touch based on is servicing. When we sit down or when anybody speaks with you and they bring up listings, you don't just talk about obtaining the listing, meaning the listing presentation. Even in your listing presentation, you mentioned servicing that listing more often than other agents that I've spoken with. Yeah, go ahead.
But what I do is this: look, I sit down with my client and I go through a listing presentation. Once I go through a listing presentation, I also talk about the service, explain to them, listen, guys, there's probably guys, and this is true story. This has happened when I've gone up, I've done listing presentations that I know that they tell me, look, Coleman Bank was here, other companies were. So a lot of guys come in here and they might have a much better listing presentation than yours. They might even speak better than I do, because I'm not the greatest speaker. And But then there's a part which is called servicing the listing. And I run, this is how I service the listing. Look at the pictures that I take. Look, go into my YouTube channel. Let's look at all the videos, right? It's very, very important on the videos. Also, you get a report from me every week. You get a report from me who's seen your listing. Communication during that service to the listing, it's very, very important. Yeah, you communicate what you're doing, right? What steps are you taking? That interaction, right? Because some people, this is what normally happens. You get these big guys already, they have this big team that they have the name. They'll get the listing because they thinking, and then they'll give it to one of the new guys to service, and the service of the listing is not what they expect. There's lack of communication. So I try to communicate with my seller once a week. I give him a report. I mean, we have an excellent in the avids, which is called the listing part of it, that tells you everything that was going on, the exposure you're getting on it. So I sit there with them and I explain to them. So communication is very, very important. So they see what's going on. For example, sometimes I have these tactics that we go, the listing has been around for like 20 days and we'll drop it $2,000. Why do we do that? We'll drop it so it'll be refreshed. That listing, everybody will get a price drop or whatever. It's a ridiculous price drop, but what you get out of it in terms of exposure, right? It's tremendous. So I explained that to my clients. We're going to do this right now, part of the marketing. So we did the cycle. It didn't move right now. So I'm that type of person, so I keep that in communicating, right? I'm also the type of listing agent that I try to price things well, but not really well. I try to always go up a little bit higher. My philosophy is you could always come down and listen, but you can't go up.
Correct.
Yeah. So it's
I want to
easier
touch base on the price point in the general listing presentation, but I want to stick to the charts first so they have an idea of production wise, and we'll wrap it up with the listing presentation because I think we have a couple questions also in the chat pertaining to your strategy as to managing the expectations, and I do have some questions on that note. Going back to a couple of these charts, so you guys know, we were touching base on the last 5 years transaction representing both sides. Guillermo is at 40%. 40% of his listings, which are 96% of his production, he's had both sides of the deal. The next one that I thought was super interesting, in the last 5 years, 11.3% of your closings have been in your listings have been in-house, meaning you've been working often with other agents within Avantiway. I wanted to see if you can elaborate on that as to what is the reasoning. Do you market in-house? What is your procedure on that note?
Well, look, I've worked a lot with different agents. I'm a team player. I'm a team player. I worked with different agents, and I rather number one sell it in-house. I've also shared listings with different with different agents. Look, guys, I remember at the beginning, it's look, most people come in the industry because they might have a listing or they might have a property to sell, right? Or they might have somebody that wants them to give them the listing. So what happens is maybe you have somebody, a family member, somebody that wants to give you a listing, and they know you're new, so they don't know you have experience. So that's when you team up. You team up with somebody that can say, listen, I'm going to team up with somebody. I've teamed up. Look, I've done. Okay, so my biggest listing that I had was $7 million. That was it took us a while to move that. It was very, very hard actually, to sell that listing. Took us a while. So I learned from that listing. The other listing two other listings that I had that were over 2 million, I teamed up with the local people. So because I had a person that wanted to give me the listing and I wanted to take the listing, but I knew I did not, that was in over my head. So I did team up with another listing agent. Listen, you could team up with listing agents from all the companies, by the way, right? Or somebody look inwards, I'm more than glad to team up with anybody. If you have a listing that you want to say, listen, I want to take this listings, but I just don't know I don't have the confidence or experience to walk you through it. Right. And we could work it together. We could definitely work it together in a sense to try to make that happen. Right. The reality is that the way you're under $1 million listings, million to 2 million, 2 to 3 million. Every segment in that category moves differently. You are expected to do different things. I remember for one time for this listing that we had this listing. It was a 2.7 in the Grove. And that one, we did something very, very creative. Art Basel was in town. So we actually lent the house to an art dealer, and they did an Art Basel party at the house, right? Which did bring in the buyer. Actually, the buyer did came from that party. And they went out, we did a party for that house, completely high-end, ballet parking. I mean, champagne, top of, and this was all covered by the company, the gallery, the sponsor. All I did was put the house, right, and connected that, and I was working that with another agent who was really into art, and he said, "Listen, let's come up with this art," and we pulled that together. And we got very, very creative. We got what we wanted for that house, because it was in the Grove. And this house was brand new house, completely. They knocked pretty much the house down. So the comps were not there. So you had this beautiful house in the Grove, but then you had the house next to it. And even the house in front of it was not as nice as ours. So it was a challenge to sell a property, right? And that's just the way we got creative with the listing to do. Actually, we did, Art Basel was in town. We did an art gallery show on the property, and that worked out in a good way.
I think this perfect example shows to the focus concentrated in your, not just your market, but your processes. I think I could summarize your strategy, not just looking at numbers, but speaking with you. Correct me if I'm wrong. Listings based, definitely the main would be the main category that will fall into play in the strategy. Buyers that are drawn from specific listings that you have, you keep those buyers, you keep in constant contact with those buyers, and you allocate those buyers to any future listings that you may have. That shows your closing on both sides of the deal. When you have a specific buyer that may not be in the areas that you control or feel or have the time or feel like you can dominate it by yourself, you are not just referring, but you're partnering up with different realtors to work that buyer. And also, if you happen to have a listing in another area that may be outside of your reach, you're also partnering up with other listing agents outside of your area.
Yes.
Would that be correct?
That is correct. Look, I'll give you an example. The last listing back in February, it was a piece of property from my neighborhood, right? A couple, they bought that property for $420. I was able to sell it for $660. Right, their kids have gone. They wanted to downsize. So one of the things that's very, very important that I do when I go to this presentation is try to figure out the motivation while they're selling. That is very, very important. You want to know if they're downsizing. You want to know if maybe they're in trouble. I mean, maybe, and you're going to see this. I believe we're starting to see this right now. Look, I don't see foreclosures coming into the market anytime soon because there's plenty of equity. And if you see a foreclosure coming into the market, somebody dropped the ball. Really, somebody dropped the ball because they could have sold that property before they lost it and get their equity out. So there's no logical reason unless somebody dropping the ball, right? And for you see a foreclosure, right? So, but you want to see if it's the downsizing, maybe they need a bigger house, right? So you kind of want to have a strategy because what's happening to me is this lately, I've been knocking doors and I've been talking to people that they want to sell, but their question then is, but where am I going to move to?
Where am I going
what am I going to do? What's okay? So their common answer is, listen, right now you can sell your house, get some equity out of your property. And that definitely I can move you some other place. But listen, where am I going to move to? So remember that if you're an investor, you kind of want to, or not an investor, the house that accumulated so much equity. Remember that you have a tax break up to so much, but then it comes to a point that you're gonna have to pay capital gains, right? So you want to make sure that you want to reach that cap and then sell that property and move into a different property, right? And so you don't get the capital gain tax, before you reach the top. So figuring out why they're selling is, so the common reasons why people are selling is Maybe another reason is, listen, the house is getting old. Maybe there are some people that they bought a house, they've been in the house 15 years. Now the roof is starting to maybe be becoming concerned. And some people don't, look, I noticed people are getting more lazy. Some people don't want to do upgrades. Some people, not everybody is that type of person that wants to change the floor, let's remodel the bathrooms. They just rather sell a property and move into a new house or a newer property, right? That they like better. So I see that a lot. So finding out why they want to move is because of the stress, because they want a newer home, because they want a bigger home. So when you find that out, right? And then you have to create a strategy to what they're going to buy. So my last 3 transactions have been the seller selling the house, and I've been with them buying the house. Now, when they're going to buy the property, I team up with another realtor, right? I don't try to do a referral. I team up as a team player, as a team, because what happens is my buyer, my seller then becomes a buyer, but he's going to trust me. So the other person ends up, maybe they, like, for example, this guy wanted to move to Pompano. So I found an expert in Pompano. He knew pretty much the whole market, and he was able to move my people into a nice home 6 blocks away from the beach. Super happy, but they were relying on me on helping them make decisions. So you don't want to have that client just give it out to a buyer agent and give me a referral and forget about it. No, your job is, they trust you selling them the house, and they trust you to recommend them where's the new house. So yeah, you partner up with an agent who's an expert in the area, but they're always going to circle back to you to want to hear your opinion. Right. You're like, they're going to say, they're going to go back. So you're going to be involved in that new property, like it or not,
And that's the thing. You're not reinventing the wheel, and we go back to your main focus. You serve as a listing, you keep the client happy. As soon as you realize that they become buyers, and that's maybe outside of your farm, and your investment as an agent, your investment as a person, your time investment is too high, you have no problem delegating that factor into a partnership with another agent that actually dominates that area. And I think that's a mentality that by doing so, you can conquer more when you're focused on what you want to accomplish. And I do think that you do so very well. These couple charts that I was showing is because something caught my attention here. The first one, the previous one, sorry about that. I don't think I can pull it up now. There we go. So in your listings for the last 5 years, in-house closings, meaning that you worked with another Avantiway agent, they represented the buyer, or 11.3%. That's a high number considering standards in the industry. For when you represented the buyer or the tenant alone, in the last 5 years, you've actually had closings with other Avantiway listing agents, and that's 25% of your closings. So you're moving a lot of your production in-house. And the main question for that, and your answer, I think, is to the point that you have no problem not only partnering, but speaking with other agents in different areas, and you do not try to do so 100% yourself, because you're not really trying to reinvent the wheel. You understand your focus, and that's how your production.
Look, one of the things that I tell you guys is, especially right now, your network. Look, I see. I don't want to discourage like the new people that are just coming on board, but right now, what you're seeing in the market is, it becomes very, very important. Your network. Have I met this person before? Because look, if I'm a listing agent and I get an offer for somebody I know, I'm going to lean toward that offer for somebody that I know, that I have some past experience with him, that was somebody that I don't know at all. Right. So now you're coming in, and look, deals are right now, one of the things that we talked about yesterday is I find myself right now with the deals that I'm having also to be very involved in the part of the closing transaction, not like before, like you would, you're a realtor, you did your part, give it off to the title company then just, take it to closing, and you just sit back and wait for the closing. You are starting to see, a lot of negotiations that are happening before that closing. We all know appraisals are probably behind. The market is moving at a quicker pace, so the appraisal issue is going to be a problem, right? So you find yourself with a lot of communication with the other, not only the title company, with the other agent. So you're going to negotiate. So you kind of want to set yourself up to start to having, if we're going to go through this transaction and there's going to be issues with, the inspection, there's going to be issues with the appraisal. I mean, we cannot expect people, to pay appraised value in this market. But we also cannot expect somebody to pay, 40, 30% over appraised value. So we have to keep things that are logical. So you want to make sure that you're going to work with another realtor that's logical. I mean, 1 + 1 is 2, and you try to get, sometimes you find yourself being a listing agent. I see it all the time. You see this listing agent, this buyer agents, they throw an offer. For example, I have a technique to deal with buyers that I could share with you another time, but I see it from my side. I mean, I see offers over asking price, with 20% in their finance. We know what they're trying to do is lock the property down, and then they're going to try to bring it down in inspection. Then they're going to try to bring it down at the, the appraisal period, and they're going to keep all this other stuff. Basically, what they want is to take your house off the market. Get yourself off the market.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I think we can describe that process as, from your perspective as a listing agent, is what you're looking for is ability to close. You're not looking for price. You're not looking for parameters that might indicate price flooring, because you know that I can offer you $1 million, but if it's contingent on appraisal and the appraisal comes back at 500,000, and it's not a done deal.
It's not yet. I mean, look, I keep telling people a couple of things. When you look at the contract, and I go this when I work with buyers. Look, contract has 4 things that are very important: price, deposits, inspection period, and appraisal. I mean, I look, sometimes I get offers for 5,000 and not a second deposit. Listen, guys, the second deposit is there for a reason. So when I get an offer and there's not a second deposit on it, right away I know I'm dealing with a rookie. I'm dealing with a new agent that did not know how to explain to the new buyer how to fill up that contract, right? Or why is the second deposit? So if this agent cannot even do that, imagine how this seller agent going to handle this buyer agent is going to handle his buyer through that transaction, because transactions are getting more complicated. They're getting more complicated to close, right? I don't know if you've seen a lot of properties. I don't know if you've seen a lot of properties in the MLS that are come back on the market.
Correct.
These are properties that were locked down. They fell for the bite. They fell for a big price. They did not appraise. Right, the listing agent did not check proof of funds if the guy had enough money to actually pay over asking, for the appraised value. I mean, just to make the same statement, deals don't fall because the property did not appraise. Deals fall because the deal did not appraise, and that buyer did not have any extra cash to cover the difference between the appraised value and the market value. I mean, in today's market, we're going what we call market. I mean, we all know the difference between appraised value and market value. Appraised value pretty much does not take supply and demand into the equation. An appraiser is going to look at the comps, what's all around, and it's going to go down. When we look at market value is going to take into account supply and demand, right? And this is something that I do when I do my listing presentations. I look at the inventories out there. I look what's around, what's coming, right? And so that perspective, if I'm going to be, in fact, I've timed, like that neighborhood that I have 2 other listings that are coming in, and I time myself. I have one that I'm closing on Thursday, and I already have the other listing. I'm going to wait for that to close, and then I'm going to come up to this one, so they don't compete against each other, right? So we need to, once we see that, we want to play the forces, of the market value. People need to understand it. So you want to make sure that the other buyer understand that. So how do you protect yourself from that? Is this, when they send the offer, you need to see proof of funds. You need to make sure that person has enough money to cover the closing costs, right? The down payment, and have extra money to actually, if there is if the property most likely will not appraise, and to cover that difference and to be going higher the difference. Look, if you look at the appraisals, and I think Enrique had a graph of the last time we saw it, they're behind. I mean, the market is, we're closing. I mean, if you look at the pendants and what's happening with the market climbing so fast month to month, that you're getting appraisals they're behind on price pretty much, So if you just wait, that's another thing that I've been doing tactics. When I'm working with an agent, I don't let them, I see what's about to close. I call the listings that are pending and how solid are you going to close? I ask them price. I do a lot of phone calls to try to understand what's going on. And I might ask, listen, let's wait for that appraisal. Don't call it in this week. We're going to move it to next week. Right?
And
Waiting
I
for that
think
property to
that
close.
I think that falls back into expectations, right? Even the agent that you choose to work with on the listing side, because let's be completely honest, in a market like ours today, in a seller's market, you have a bias directly related to the buyer's agent who's submitting the offer. I think you're completely right on that. If you have an agent that you know how they work, they do it well, versus an agent that whom you do not know and their offer is a disaster, looks a little bit iffy, even if that price point is higher, you're more than likely going to be biased to the agent that you know and that works well. But it all, in my head, it all has to do with the expectations that you set. You set the expectations to your seller as to time frame, value, and any other terms you may discuss in the listing presentation. The buyer's agent's role is to set the expectations to the buyer. How much cash you have to come out of pocket at closing if you're in a market like ours, what you have to do, what the speed of the game is, and what the process is. So I think that bias on that perspective from the listing agent side is very, very, very important for us to know, especially coming from you.
And let me ask you, when I have a chance, when I'm actually talking to like the open houses and I see the buyers come in and they're putting an offer and they go, sometimes they tell you the open house, we're going to put an offer in. Great. I always ask, did you go over the contract with your agent? If they say yes, if they say no, I just keep that, I can check, because it's, look, part of the buying process, and I do that all the time, I go over the contract with all my buyers right before, so I can explain to them how the process is going to work, you know, so I can set the right expectations. If not, they will not understand that, you know, they will not understand why is there a second deposit. They don't understand the inspection period, you know. So we could talk about the buyer side of it in a different interview if you want, because to me, the buyers, if you're working with buyers right now, the name of the game is called speed. That is the name of the game right now. I'm seeing it all over. It is. I'm having a great success with buyers too, and I've worked with buyer agents. But the name of the game on the buyer side is called speed.
Correct.
It's called speed, and when you're dealing with the listing part of it, I wouldn't say that it's speed, but it's just being top of mind. When you're in the listing side of it, it's top of mind because there's a lot of people on the fence. There's a lot of people on the fence. Should I sell? Should I not sell? Is it going to start coming down? Are interest rates going to go down? Is inflation? Let me tell you guys a little. Inflation is good for real estate. You know, inflation. It's, you know, if you have money, you're going to want to take that money out of the bank and put it into real estate, right? Because inflation, it's you know, we're not affected by inflation. So we're going to start seeing a lot of people that have money in the stock, maybe, and wanted to put that into real estate right now, probably be the safest place, because having just hard cash on the bank, which cash is king, I get it, but without going into this inflation, you know, you might want to take that out and put it into real estate, because real estate is not going to depreciate. So we're going to see a lot of those movements happening too, and they're happening, right? So it's interesting. So I see real estate and I see the listing part of it. Look, for example, I see a lot of people that the number one question that I get when I'm about to sell, and then they tell me, well, what am I going to do? So let's get back to that train thought, right? So I sit down and say, listen, let me give you some data. If you look at data, there were more houses sold this month compared to last year's months, this year. So there is inventory. There's people moving. I mean, it's what's happening is there is inventory out there. What's happening is the days in the market have gotten way shorter.
You don't get a chance to see it.
You didn't get a chance to see it. It just went by you and you just didn't get a chance to see it. We could argue that maybe not the right type of inventory is out there. Yeah, okay, yeah, I know the 400s and the 450s, it's very competitive, but there's ways of getting it. There's ways of staying ahead of that. I mean, my last buyer that I worked at with Antonio, and you guys know Antonio Arcon, the guy is, you know, paid, I think, one of the top buyers agents. I mean, basically what we did is we went back to see properties that were taken off the market, that were on the market, were taken off the market. And why did it get taken off the market is because they did not appraise 3 months earlier. So now we're calling them, listen, I have an offer for you for 450, this is Dora, now it's going to appraise. So now I'm willing to put an offer, so go back. This is probably a buyer that wanted to sell a property, wanted to get, had a number in their mind. The deal didn't go through because the house didn't appraise. So they took it off the market. So that's kind of like low food. If you talk to them, I said, listen, I do have a serious buyer. Here's my offer, right? This is the price that you wanted. Now I'll guarantee you that price, and the price will be there now. So the question is, there is inventory out there. So when people see the data that there is inventory, yes. So I keep telling them, listen, I could, and I did this in my last 3 deals. I could sell your property and put you in the property that you want. You just have to give me the opportunity to explain to me, and there has to be a strategy and a plan in place. And there has to be a strategy to sell your property, and there has to be a strategy to purchase a property, right? And it's very, very, very important that you walk them through the whole process, right? See the contract, the data. Why is that important? Because look, people tend not to trust real estate. Just by talking to them and saying your pretty things and seeing your sales pitch, they're not going to trust you. So once they see numbers and you see numbers and that it's being done and you explain to them that those numbers give you credibility. Facts give you, credibility. So we show them, listen, boom, we could do this and we could do it like this. We're going to have your house sold. And I show them, look, I rely on my past records. I really leverage myself on my records. I know some of you guys are new, which is going to be very hard for you because you have no record, right? It's going to be a little bit harder of a challenge for you guys. I suggest you team up with somebody who knows, so you could balance, leverage yourself with that person. Because it's right now, I could tell them, listen, I've done it the last 3 times. And I explained to them, listen, this is the guy, this is the house we bought. This is how we saw, this is how we did it, right? So when there's a plan, and one of the things that requires for these plans to work is that you need to have your client on board with what you're telling. They need to believe you. It's like the way I tell my clients, listen, I'm going to train you to go to war. So we train, we do all trainings, you listen to me. But when we're at war, if I tell you to jump, you better jump. Because if you ask me to jump, then maybe there's a bomb under you. So it's come. So we'll miss that house. So when I'm doing buyers, we have offers already set up even before we go see the property. And they're like, how am I going to put an offer without even seeing the property? And I run into the contract. There's ways to protect them to do that. Right. There's ways to do that. So we're putting offers, like I'll, for example, I'll tell my buyers, listen, we're going to work as a team. Not to work today's, a seller agent and a buyer work together. You'll be looking at Zillow, I'll do the automatic search. As soon as you see something, I don't care what time it is, you send it to me, I verify it. And I always ask them, give me a number from 0 to 10. If they give me a 7 and up, we're in offer territory. I'm right. That offer is being sent. I'm saying that offer, boom, find it up. And they're like, and then we'll go see the house tomorrow or the next before. But that's a different talk, right? But there are strategies that I could definitely love to share with you guys if you're dealing more with buyers. I'm happy, like you said, I'm dealing with both of them. I'm more of a listing agent, but I have to do, that guy's selling the property. If he's not moving out of town, if he's not moving out, which I thought most people were starting to move to like Tampa or Orlando. Yes, it's happening, but it's not as much as I've seen it. So what I do is, I'm having to actually get in the trenches and going to the buyer side of it, and that part is interesting.
Correct.
So,
I think the most important factor here in the strategy is not only do you set expectations by being completely transparent about the process, but you also get very much involved in the planning as to moving forward. When you sit with a seller that asks the questions, where do I go next? You go over not just the financial picture, the timeframes, their urgency, motivation, the market as to where they're going to go. And you really rely on not just affiliates, but their cooperation on their timeframes moving forward, and you set the expectations on both ends. And I think that all translates into your production this year. I wanted to show everybody here how your production and your percentages and your numbers have been adapting to current market situations. Prior to this, we saw the last 5 years. And I want to show you what this little comments that I wrote here mean. Past 5 years, total production, Guillermo had close to a 50-50 sales versus rental transactions, in the last 12 months, your sales transaction percentage actually went up. You have 70% of all your production is sales. So you've actually gotten away from rental transactions and divided more your time more into sales. So now the thing that we have to keep in mind here is it something that you chose to move away from, or is this something market related that you have seen?
Market related. Listen, I'm the kind, I don't say no to anything. I take on every deal, right? I think the last 8 years I've done commercial. By the way, I don't like commercial at all. Those deals are very, very complicated. They last a long time. So, and they're very, very stressful. So it's not rentals. Rentals are gotten very hard. Rentals before were very simple. Rentals by nature, there's no inventory when it comes to rentals. You are competing with, also we're seeing the market getting flow rental communities. If you're looking, all the builders are coming up, the rental communities, and a lot of rental communities, they're not even paying commission anymore. I mean, we're getting $500, maybe $400 referral fee. Some of them, they don't even pay commissions anymore. So I think that's market related, right? Because I really, and it's a little frustrating because when I get somebody that wants to rent something, it's a challenge. It's a challenge and it's a lot of effort. So I'd rather not walk away from it. But at the end, they're probably going to end up in a rental community, right? And that's basically what's happening. So there's no inventory. And the person who's renting, when you do it with a guy who's doing the rental, they're very limited to what they could get, right? What we're seeing a lot in the market, I've seen a lot of short-term rentals. Right. So I see a lot of short-term rentals at very high prices,
Now, I do want to note for everybody, which is very interesting to me, the percentage that you lost over in the rental deals, it directly got allocated into your sales volume. Now, the cool thing that I noticed here, let me show you, is that in your transaction representation, the amount of listings that you've gotten in the past 12 months actually went up. It went up 4%. So now at your core, not only are you dealing with more sales transactions instead of rental transactions, but you're dealing with more listings totally, meaning listings for representing the sellers and landlord all together. Your numbers actually went up when it comes to listings. The next thing is that, and very, very cool to realize, is your percentage for your sales transaction went up to 70% from 50. Your listing percentages actually went up 4% to 91%. But your representation, your closing of your listings on both ends of the deal actually stayed the same. So you're still at close to 40% of representing both sides in the past 12 months. Now, this all speaks to the strategy we looked at before, right? Meaning your attention is devoted to listings. We can see that from the numbers. When you get buyers and they do not fit for those listings, you keep them until you get another listing and you're putting those buyers there. When you get a particular buyer outside of this farming or somebody that's looking elsewhere, you partner up to cover all those bases. Is that something that you're still doing? I do see more sales transactions and more listings. So it's very interesting to see if your strategy has shifted. You already answered that market circumstances got you away from rentals. Do you see more activity on the listing side on your end?
But I'm planning to, yeah. I mean, I'm still working. I have, like I said, I have like 4 listings coming up that already pretty much they're mine. I think nothing is yours until it's signed, but I think they're on the way. I mean, a lot of these people are thinking of where they're going to move. So I'm working with them to see where they want to move, because it's basically what, I'm still in the process that I know they're going to sell the property, but I'm still in the discovery phase. Look, it's very, very important that you realize why they want to sell, because if it's a distressed situation, they really don't want to tell you they're behind, with the association. They really don't, they're kind of embarrassed, but in those cases, you need to list as quick as possible and sell that property as, ASAP, So depending on the need, we're gonna actually, take that, we're gonna time it out, So depending on the need of the list, because you could definitely sell a listing in one day. I mean, my listings pretty much, I saw them. If you look at the days in the market, they're sold. They don't say 1 day because I wait the 10 days, I wait the 10 days, but basically one open house. And let me actually, let me give a big shout out to Javier, who's doing the open houses for us over here. So now we have a team of Avanti that you could use for the open houses. And let me tell you, they're doing a great job. I mean, it's taking my open houses to a whole different level, from the sign, from the things there, from the checklist, the thing with the AVIX that people check in from the phone, and you get the names right into your CRM.
So that guys, whole process, definitely reach out to Javier if you have a listing. That's very important that you mentioned Guillermo. That is an initiative that we're taking, the company as a whole, Javier being in charge of that department, to really guide you through the process of doing an open house the right way, planning for the open house the right way. I know that Guillermo, I've seen you in a couple pictures, and you've been number one, the first person that jumped in that bandwagon. So you can speak for the service. It's very good, and how.
Well, look, before it was like this. Things happen for a reason. Look, I'm more of a team player, and I would team up. I created a team. I also have my personal and profile, and I have a profile of the team, right? I'm still trying to build a team together. I'm at the face. I have a team, but really I don't have a team, because I basically, look, what I have is, it's more of a mentor program right now. I think what it is. I mean, I think if you guys look, I think the future is about teams. If you look at all these companies and the team structure is working, and I see in the future how these teams are moving, like the Compass, or moving to different places, right? So that team has value, right? But you got to find team players. So if it makes sense for me to find somebody who'll be the team, who's good with buyers, who's good at servicing. I mean, you got to have a specific role in the team. What's happening is I've created a team, and I've been taking people on the team, but it's basically more of a mentoring situation, which I'm helping them mentor them to go through the process so they could then fly on their own,
Right. Is different on that note.
Yeah, I've gone back and I worked. If you look at the flight, I worked with a lot of realtors and different listings and different stuff, and my philosophy is, you really don't know how good people are until you see them out on the field. And usually some things happens. Sometimes you find somebody just shadowing you, following you, just doing the same thing that you're doing, that's just transfer information, which is, I'm glad to do that, but that's not basically a team. I mean, I want somebody that could do something different that I'm not doing, right? So we could split and conquer, divide and conquer. That would be the idea, right? So that's happening. I think Avanti set up a team structure it's new. There's some teams that are pushing it through, and it's working. Look, this business, it's a lot about motivation. It's about motivating yourself. This business, you have to have the right mindset, and you have to get yourself out of bed, and you have to push yourself. So you have to put your goals in set. I mean, look, I wake up myself every morning and I write, look, my goal is for this year is 22 listings. I'm going to do at least $320,000 in commission. And I say that to myself every day to get myself out of bed. So that mindset, it's very, very important. And when you have a team, sometimes you find yourself getting pushed by the team, to try to make the team meeting and make some structure. Otherwise, you pretty much do whatever you want in this business, So some people, not everybody has the discipline to actually do the 1, 2, 3s. Believe it or not, it sounds kind of funny what I'm going to say, but the simple things are the hardest things to do.
Correct.
The 1, 2, 3. I'm not inventing the wheel here. I'm not inventing. Look, I'm not. And I'll be honest with you, I'm happy with what I'm doing, but I know this could even get better.
Always. And that is I think you and your production, and you're at a standpoint where thinking about a team is not crazy at all. It's actually a necessity once you get into numbers that you cannot manage yourself. But if you look at this concept, you've been doing almost a team structure in the past, but you've been partnering up. You've already been used to the delegating game. Now, you wouldn't have to make an entire transition to creating the team structure and whatnot, because it came natural to you. You said, if I don't work a particular area, if I don't work buyers per se, this is going to take more time away from my main goal. Why not delegate that? I'm still going to be involved in it, but it makes complete sense. That's what I meant when we first started this, and I mentioned to everybody, the simplicity and the transparency outlook of your business, it just goes down to 1, 2, 3. It's very common sense and very action driven and very focused as to what you want to do. Before I end this presentation, because I do want to take some questions, last 12 months transactions, listings versus buyers, 100% have been listings for sales transactions, and that is impressive. That's been quite a jump. And the last one for your rental transactions, listings representing the landlord have been 71%, and obviously representing the tenant, 28.6%. We do see a drop on rental movement, but we saw that same increase in sales transactions that we saw before. I did want to note that in the last couple of slides, and I don't know, Guillermo, if you want to add a couple of things more before we go into questions.
No, just look, the rental part of it, it's gotten, look, rentals have gotten very, very hard. They take a lot of effort. So if you're new, if you have times you can't take them on because they're going to make you practice. That's the way. Look, I try to keep myself, but now it's just became like a time issue for me. And so you tell me, I get a rental. I'm like, oh, it's gotten hard, and that is becoming even like stressful because I don't really know how am I going to attack that rental. Because they have the budget, we go through them, and even the rentals, you go see a rental, they hit the market, they're gone within 1 day, right? And people are paying over that, and then you have the rental communities that are there. So that rental part of it, I see us getting away from it. So I rather spend my time in other things that are going to be more productive to me right now.
Correct, and that's what I meant by focus. You absolutely know exactly what you want to do and what your focus is on, and you see yourself delegating what might take away from that focus. Not giving a referral, that we want to make completely clear, but getting help as to servicing those buyers, tenants, or an aspect of your business that doesn't have to do with a core focus. We have a cool question that was my next one. Anna is asking, Guillermo, what is your advice for rookies when it comes to getting listings? When we don't have numbers to show, what should I do if I don't have any track record in the industry?
Well, I suggest you team up. I'm more than glad to help you if you want, or find somebody that wants to team up with you, right? So you could use their numbers for them. I mean, okay, okay, so let's say, Anna, it's very simple. You might have somebody might want to give you a listing because they know you, you're a friend of them, so they know you as where you're coming from, but you have no experience. So these people they're willing to take a gamble with you, right? And having that listing, or you want to bring in. Now, it also depends how hard it's going to be selling that listing. There's some listings that are going to sell in this market by themselves. One of the things that this guy, for example, this guy never threw out, if you look and how about you could double check that, I don't discount my listings. All my listings are 6%, 3 and 3. I've gotten questions before of somebody, and I walk around and I explain to them, listen, we're going to loosen the marketing. We're going to go, but it's going to depend to the degree. Now, if it's a very, very easy listing that you're going to be able to sell it, right? If you're going to listen, if they're going to price it or underprice it, because a lot of people, you'd be surprised, a lot of people, they have a number in mind already, how much they want to sell a property. And that number might be under market value already. You could get them a lot more, right? And it's just not going to happen. I mean, they're just fixing that number, and they're going to leave money on the table. So I would tell you to partner up with somebody, and that partner, you can tell, listen, just come with me, get the listing, or help me out. This is my first listing. I want you to walk. Like, for example, if you wanted to do it with me, we would go definitely talk about the numbers, and depending on my involvement, that's the percentage of commission that I would want to take from you. You might say, listen, Guillermo, I want you to do this for me. I'm going to be your back seat, we'll go 50-50 and you run the whole thing and I'm just going to follow. Or I just want you to mentor me. Just tell me, look, tell me what to do. Come with me to listing presentation, show your face, just do your numbers, give me the listing, and then I service it. Right. And then I could walk you through it. So it's all talkable. Let's all talk about it. But it's basically, it's just common sense. The more you want me to do, the more percentage it's going to be. Now, I believe that let's say if you have the listing, if you get the appointment, right, just right there, that's 50-50, and then I do the rest of the work. So, but we could talk on an individual basis, right? But the idea is to be fair. The idea is, look, when you're dealing with fair people, nobody wants to take advantage of anybody, and you want them to be happy, and it's fine. I mean, and there's nothing wrong that you do your first listing with somebody else that has more experience. So it's taking it on. Now you could do it on yourself too. I mean, there's look, I think Avanti has enough coaching, has enough support lines that you could do it on your own. I mean, but there's some people that like, that look, we all learn differently. Like, for example, myself, I'm the kind of person that I need to, let me see you do it. Okay, so I'll read about it, and then let me do it with me, and then I'll do it by myself.
I think in essence for listings, listings do require a little bit more, and not to say too much more, but they require a little bit more transactional based knowledge and servicing, and a little bit more experience. Now, I think the core of the question is the way that I would put it is, would I recommend a brand new realtor to jump into listings? Most of the time my answer would be no. I would jump into tenant representation, buyer representation prior to starting a campaign to serve to get listings, because of all the factors that Guillermo was saying. Now, once you gather up the experience on a transactional basis, on your knowledge and everything else, that's when you can start really campaigning for listings and whatnot. But a good point that Guillermo was like, no, it's partner up. If you get a listing, you're not sure how to service it, get the proper advice and learn from that specific channel. Now, Richard had one more question.
Let me finish
yes,
with that. Look, just really quick. Sometimes you're new in the industry and you have an aunt or you have a family member that wants to give you the listing. They're like, listen, I want to listen. I want to help you out. And they want to give you that listing. So I suggest in those times, maybe you have no experience, partner up, because that listing, if you do it right, that's going to be under your belt. That's going to be, from now on, look, another thing that I recommend, guys, for you guys that are new, make sure your digital print is correct. Make sure you're in Zillow, make sure you're in Julia, make sure you're in, go to Google Business, Google search, and because people are going to Google you. So it's very, and it's very cheap and it's very easy to do. But your digital footprint, it's very, very important that you have that off the gate.
And that's something that we were discussing. You can market yourself all you want. You can do all the strategies, but you got to think about where is the customer going to land, right? So I can show you everything. I can show you my Facebook. Where are they going to go to look at who I am and whatnot? That's likely going to be online. So your digital footprint, I agree 100%, has to be in place. Two last questions since we are out of time. Richard is asking Guillermo, have you noticed any slowdown in the market and some price points? And the last one is, can you comment on the cost and style of the materials that you use on your marketing, on your door knocking campaigns?
Okay, so I'll start with Richard. Have I noticed a slowdown? This last 2 weeks, I kind of noticed there's some uncertainty. I guess a war going on. Could you guys hear me? Okay, so yeah, so I kind of noticed a little bit of some people are putting on the back burner a little bit of what's going on, right? We get up, I talk a lot to people. If it's the right time to sell, I say yes. Is this going to boom? Is this going to fall? Is the market going to fall? So we have those conversations a lot with people that are talking about. So I keep throwing them data, but so yeah, I seen it's not dropping prices. I have not seen it dropping prices, but I do seen it. For example, if we saw the stats of last month compared to last year's month, it's a 4% growth. So, that's involving. Normally, normally should be 3, 4, which is what we're going back to normal, but we were having 5, 6. So that's that. To the other question, my printouts, I get all the digital stuff, right? I do from the Avex, and then I just go to Home Depot and I'll print out, if you print out, they have not the cheapest paper, the other paper, that's about $100 for each thing that you roll out. You set it up, and that, so one page has 2, so you could get 2 and they cut it for you, right? So it's relatively cheap. I mean, I spend sometimes in the campaigns that I do in there. So I found, look, the reason I did door knocking a lot was door knocking is the cheapest by far way. Look, if you do a mail out, you're paying a lot more money. You're paying about $600, $400 for a mail out, which basically materials just cost you 100, 150, and then you have to walk the rest of the stuff. I don't mind walking. I mean, I think I'm a very athletic kind of person, but I do like walking. I like talking. Look, sometimes I'm bored and I'll just get off my car and start door knocking. It's crazy, it's just a way to practice, talk to people and getting some insight. I mean, I'm the kind of person that I believe that things happen for a reason. So if I'm at open house, like if I'm driving around and I see an open house, I get off and see the house and get the information. And then maybe a buyer will be like, I just want a house like this, and then you put 2 and 2 together. So keep your eyes open. I mean, be mindful. I tell new people, listen, be mindful that you're a realtor now. You're in real estate. So, open houses matter to you. Whatever chance to see when you walk into somebody's house, look at the house, high ceilings, what kind of the materials, you're in real estate, so have your mindset, be aware of those things. And now those things have something to do with, the materials of the house being built. When you pass by new construction, look at the houses. Are they using block in the bottom? Are they using wood in the top? Certain things now put yourself in the mindset that you are a realtor, you are in real estate. So all these little things.
I always tell people, when you get invited to a party at somebody's house, run some comps just in case. Check out the inventory just in case. Because what is the first question that people ask you when you're an agent? Hey, Guillermo, you're an agent. How's the market? If you have the information.
Let me tell you guys, I definitely recommend. I have this app called Home Snap. I mean, this is amazing. Look, I'm going to quickly run through. This is the one. It's Home Snap, right? You could put your logo or whatever. But this has this thing right here that you take a picture of it right here, and you look at the house and take a picture. Every house that I go that get invited, I take a picture of the house. Right before I walk into the house, I know how much you bought it for. So I have that information in case they ask me. So, oh yeah, I noticed you bought this house for $460. You've done great, man. This house, it's right now market value. And this app will give you that, your fingertips. You just got to get into the habit of using it.
Now, guys, I do want to mention that Guillermo has a YouTube channel where he posts a lot of his video, a lot of his different styles that he's doing now, a lot of the showcasing of not just listings, but walkthroughs, interviews, information pertaining to the market that you guys can get a couple ideas from. Obviously, keep up to date. So Guillermo, if you want to share in the chat your link for your YouTube channel,
guys, definitely, I appreciate it. Look, I'm trying to get to 1,000 users, right? I'm almost there because once you get to 1,000 users, YouTube starts to pay. But not only forget about that they pay you, they open up your channel for a lot of exposure, right? So I really appreciate if you guys will subscribe to the channel. My YouTube channel, I'll just put it, it's very simple. It's Guillermo Teran Caldera. Just put it in the chat right here.
And interesting question, Guillermo. I have that question myself. Has your YouTube channel generated any leads directly from the YouTube channel?
To be honest with you, at this point, I've noticed I got a lot more traction. The videos are getting shown. I'm being shown the videos. I've been putting up all my real estate videos on that. So it makes it a lot easier too. When I sit with a client, just go to my YouTube channel and they start seeing what's there.
And I think the answer to that question it's very difficult to track on this note what lead comes from your YouTube channel on a service-based industry. And let's put it this way, if I were selling a service like a cruise, if I was doing this and I had a promotion that I could put in my YouTube channel and somebody subscribed for a discount, et cetera, I could track that as to coming an organic lead from a YouTube channel. In our industry, what is our core focus when we have a YouTube channel, when we have any social media channels, video related, whatnot? Our core focus is to drive information to the end consumer. Very hard in our industry to track direct leads from YouTube, but I'm not saying anything else. If you don't see leads coming directly from your webpage or YouTube channel or whatnot, does not have to do that. You're not generating leads that way. It all ties up together and it's part of an IMC, an integrated marketing campaign, and that presence has to be there. With that note, guys, I do see that Guillermo posted his YouTube channel name, and you guys can look it up on YouTube and subscribe. Very important that you guys check it out. I do see that Guillermo has implemented a couple new strategies as to video and listed presentations, whatnot. We're out of time for today. We are going to touch base with Guillermo in the near future. He does have this interview in Spanish coming up this Thursday at 11 o'clock. But more than anything, Guillermo, I wanted to thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us and giving us a couple tips. Very interesting to see your perspective. I did want you to share with everybody. And thank all of you for coming.
And also, guys, feel free to contact me. I'm a team player. I mean, I'm about service. You do good, I do good. So from that point of view, just ask me. I'm not, look, I'm a straight shooter. I'm going to tell you things how they are. I might not be right, I might not be wrong, but I'll give you my opinion, right? So that I could do, and I don't mind sharing. I don't hide things. I don't think I have a secret sauce. I think, if you guys are good, I share. I also, and I much rather do business with somebody that needs help, or not that needs help within the company, right? But if you guys need help, feel free.
And it shows in your numbers. Thank you, guys. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, guys.
Hope you all have a great day.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank
you,
you.
Guillermo.